The Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah. We'll really focus on his WCW run because it's a great run, and that's actually where you wrestled him. But where did you meet him first? Where did you meet Macho Man first?
The first time I ever met Randy Savage, I was having breakfast, and either they used to run Hamburg and what else where they did the tapings? Reading was no
Allentown.
Allentown. I don't know which one was first. Do you know which one? One was like a Tuesday, and the other one was a Wednesday.
I'm
I'm
not
not.
sure which order. Yeah.
Well, I had stayed over, uh, and the hotel I stayed over at, everybody stayed there, and I was sitting down, and Randy walked in with Angelo, and they sat down with Vince. And I guess because Randy and I were the same age, Vince waved me over, introduced me to Randy. Randy was there doing jobs with a mask on because he was playing baseball
Oh
for
wow.
the Cincinnati Reds. You know the story about him breaking his arm, right?
Yeah. So he's such a nut. Told himself to throw a lefty. Yeah. Yep.
10,000 balls a day he threw.
Oh, what a nut.
Yeah, he was really obsessive compulsive. And
Yep.
then later on, they came into Knoxville, that plan B, right? And that's when the guys from Knoxville broke away from Ronald and they joined up with the Paphos. And I'm going to an outdoor show, and they're running an outdoor show, and I pull into it, and they were all paranoid, because I had Tony Charles in the car and Les Thornton, I mean, big
Yep.
time shooters. And I think they thought we were trying to break up the show. And I remember Lanny running up to the car going, Savage just bench press 405 today. I said, okay. And I explained to him, hey, sorry, uh, I thought I asked, this was before GPS. I said, I asked someone when the wrestling was and pointed it out. I said, I'm not here to be, be involved in the show. We just made a mistake. Do you know where we are? Yeah, yeah. 10 minutes down the road, blah, blah, blah. I said, have a nice show. And then later on, maybe 6 months later, I'm at a bodybuilding show. I was the East Tennessee Championships, and I was in the open contest, and Randy was in the novice one. And I showed Randy how to paint in his abs. So Randy and I knew each other for a very long time. Yeah. And we became very, very good friends.
Who did better in the competition? You or him?
I was in the open one, which is means that I had qualified for the higher uh, competition. I won that one. I think he placed second in the novice.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
We didn't compete against each other because I had won a contest, and if you won a contest, you went to the open.
Gotcha.
Or you placed first, second, or third. So Randy, the next contest, if he entered, it would have been an open. Yeah.
Did you run into him like through the years at all? Like, obviously he's in Memphis. I mean, he's going to ICW. He's going to all these different places. Did you run into him before WWF at all, or no?
Yeah, I actually worked Memphis I think I told you the story when Jerry Jarrett broke away from the NWA office.
Yep.
The NWA members were split, like the Sheik sent guys and himself to Nick and Eddie and Watts, and they actually sent Harley to the Memphis show. Harley was on top, and I believe it was Jarrett. Crockett had sent in, or Watts had sent in the Rock and Roll Express. Me and Mike went up there, and as the World Tag Team Champions, and Dusty came up from Florida, and Gerald Briscoe came up. So it was really strange that the NWA had abandoned uh, the lifelong. They were members from 1949, the year after it started. So that was a strange one. But anyway, I had Randy was on. Then later on, I would go up occasionally and wrestle in Memphis, and I I met Randy there. Then I met Randy in Port. For a little while, I was working weekends. For a while, I was working San Antonio, Puerto Rico, Florida, and for Mario Savoli at the same time. And I would just go to Puerto Rico for like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or sometimes on a Thursday. And Randy was over there, and Randy and I hung out together.
Nice. When you look at it though, what did you think of him? Did you think he was like nutty OCD, or did you like him? Did you think like, oh, this yeah, he's just a wacky guy. I like this guy.
Oh, I really liked Randy. I he, he was a lot smarter than people gave him credit for. His brother, he was a genius, and there's a thin line between being a genius and a madman. And Lanny was a very good guy. He had a great job at WCW. I think he made one TV in 5 years,
Yeah.
and and I really liked it that Randy was a loyal guy, because after him and Elizabeth got divorced, uh, he got her a job at WCW. She had gone through another divorce, and Randy made sure that she got a good job. Not that she wouldn't have been hired, but it showed that Randy was a real good guy.
Did you follow when he got to the WWF and saw his ascension? Because obviously he gets there. He's the IC champ. He's the world champ. I mean, he's main event guy. He's basically 1A to Hogan's 1. You know what I mean? So, what did you think about his ascension and rise in the WWF?
I thought it was a little strange this way. No knock on anybody, but you look back, they used the Memphis guys tremendously. I mean, there was the Moondogs, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Randy, Honky,
Yep.
Jimmy Hart. Let's face it, Hulk was there also. David
Bam at one point. Yep.
David Schultz, who was pushed very hard, spent a lot of time with Hogan in Memphis. David's I believe he's either Tennessee or Kentucky or Arkansas or Mississippi guy. He was trained by Herb Welsh, who was an old time, big time shooter. So it surprised me, because when I went to Memphis, uh, me and Steve Kern were like traded for Tommy Rich when Tommy went back to Atlanta. And when Steve and I got there, we were kind of horrified, because it was completely different than Atlanta and way different than Florida. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They did a lot of comedy spots, but they knew their audience. And Lala was over, like really, really over. I mean, an incredible record for drawing that he had. And I didn't it surprised me that those guys were pushed as hard as they were because they came from Memphis. But the thing that I didn't realize was how close Jarrett was to both senior and junior.
Meaning Jerry, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
When you look at Macho Man in that run, to me, he's like the second biggest draw in WWF. Obviously, Hogan's won by a while and by a mile, but he's like the number two because they give him the title in '88, and there was no drop off. I know you still had the Mega Power, still had Hogan and Andre, still you still were had Hogan helping, but as champion, there's no drop off. When it goes from Hogan to Warrior, you see a precipitous drop off. So to me, it just shows you it's like okay, you put Hogan all the way at the top, and you probably put Savage second, right?
Oh, definitely. And like you said, I'm sure if you looked at their books, there were times that Randy either kept it the same, the houses the same, and the big markets, or maybe even went up. If it went down, it was very slight and evened out. I'm not going to say that Randy outdrew Hulk, because at that period, no one was going to. But what a great, and I don't think, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think a lot of people understood how hard to follow Hulk was. That was following uh, Babe Ruth. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
It was, Randy did an incredible job. The people, he worked so hard too. He was a perfectionist. He worked extremely hard.
To me, and I always give Bret Hart a pass because people are like, "Oh, he's no Hogan." Nobody is. It's like the Bulls stunk after Jordan left. Like,
Right.
and not that Bret stunk. Bret was still great, but it's just to the point. It's like, come on, you go from like that tippy top, you can't follow it. You just can't follow it. There's no. But Savage did a great job of maintaining at least when he was champ for a year.
I thought he was fabulous. I thought he was fabulous. And I thought they could have got more out of their teaming together and especially them wrestling in one another.
Really, even more because to me that's probably the best feud ever.
Yeah, I think they could have got a lot more, but we have heard about the problems, right?
Yep.
It's almost like I've said this to you before about the Peanuts comic book. Uh, Lucy, you're going to pull the football away from me. You know, the Thanksgiving one they always used to do.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to pull it from you, Charlie. No, you've done it the last 3 years. You're going to pull it from me. You're paranoid. Goes to kick it. She pulls it, takes a bump. I think that caused some of Randy's paranoia. If they had been, people don't understand it was a completely different business back then. No guarantees except, what was it, 5 shows a year at $150, right? Was
Or
that
10 shows. Yeah, something low like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And so it was a little bit more of being in a shark tank, and there was blood in the water. But Randy brought out the best in Hulk, and I think Hulk brought out the best in Randy. They could have done some long range, as well as you said. They did a great program, but I think it could have even been greater. I mean, they're both creative guys. I don't care what anybody says about Hulk Hogan. Uh, he's also pretty smart with finishes. He grew up in Florida seeing the best finishes in the world from Eddie Graham.
Hmm.
Uh, he went to the Gulf Coast area where the Fullers were and drew like in Dothan, Alabama. I think he drew 20,000 people at a football Stadium in Dothan, Alabama, where I bet you at that time the surrounding area, I was going to say 100, but it couldn't have been more than 150,000. So, I mean, and then the Fullers, the Fullers were from, they were third generation at that time. The grandfather, the father, uh, their father owned, and their grandfather owned a bunch of territories. Their dad owned, at one time, Phoenix. He owned the Gulf Coast area at one time. He owned part of Georgia. He owned part of Florida. In the later years, he tried to run Ohio for a while and did fairly well until he lost some TV stations. So Hulk learned a lot from smart guys. Ronald Fuller was a very, very good booker. Ronald Fuller was a guy that would book 3 or 4 months in advance. And he had programs laid out, and he would go to the guys and saying, he was open minded. He would say, okay, this is where we're going to start. I'm thinking about I want the heel to screw the baby face, but I want the baby face on TV next week to jump the heel and get something back. And he was just very good because he was around his father, but he was around Eddie since he was a kid too, so he was sitting in on those finishes. He was sitting on the long range programs, which I think today a lot of people say, well, you can't do that. I don't understand why you can't. You maybe don't have to book a year out like Eddie would do in Vince Sr. Vince Sr., you've heard stories where he told Billy Graham the day he was going to win the belt and the day he was going to lose it 11 months later.
Yep.
So I don't see why you can't do at least 3 months out, So Hulk was very smart. And then you get Randy, whose dad was a huge star. You're aware of that, right, John?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I mean,
Angelo Poffo. Yep.
He was the U.S. champion when that meant something. In fact, I believe that's why Vern Gagne didn't win the NWA title. Lou was pissed about that. You know about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they created the U.S. belt for Gagne, and it caused confusion with the people on TV who was the champion. And I think that stuck in Lou's craw, and he didn't give it to Vern, and he ended up giving it to Dick Hutton, who didn't draw but in a few territories. So that belt really meant something. I mean, the night Rogers won the world title from O'Connor, he was the U.S. champion also.
I love it. When you go back with like Hogan and Randy and you're looking at it, okay, so 1994 comes and Hogan's in WCW, he wins the title, he beats Ric Flair at Bash of the Beach 1994. Then Starrcade 94, a few months later, Hogan's feuding with the Butcher and yourself and the Avalanche, the three faces of fear. But Macho Man is going to come in. The infamous story of he calls Vince, he tells him, I'm done. Like, I'm going to WCW, but he called him like 3 o'clock in the morning when he was, I guess, half asleep and said, too bad. That's it. I'm gone. I'm out of here. I don't want to be an ambassador. I don't want to be a commentator. I still have a lot of, fuel left in the tank. So Hogan and him have an on and off relationship. How does Hogan get him in? He just decided to trust him again and they were friends again in 1994?
Well, here's what I mean. Business is business with Hogan. He knew that Randy drew money. He knows that he's going into a territory that isn't stacked like he had it. You know, let's not forget when Hogan came into WWE or WWF at the time, right?
Yep.
You had the Iron Sheik, one of the hottest heels. You had Nikolai Volkov. You had Randy Savage at his height. You had Hogan. You had, weren't the Harts there about that same
Hmm.
time?
Oh yeah.
You had Roddy Piper. You had
Yep.
Don Morocco. You had Superfly Snooker. You had three of the established some of the all-time great managers. You had Ricky Martel. You brought in the Junkyard Dog. You had the Briscoes. You had the Funks. Ted DiBiase. It was a main event from top to bottom. I'm sure. Jim Duggan. King Kong Bundy. Andre the Giant. Big John Studd. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But out of all those guys I mentioned, Randy drew, except for maybe Andre, Randy drew the most money. That except for Hogan.
Yep.
So why wouldn't you want that guy on your card?
Yeah, true. And I guess Hogan, like you said, is all about the business, the money aspect. And he's bringing him in at first to kind of reform the mega powers, if you will, the ultimate maniacs, the mega maniacs, if you will. I mean, he's bringing back his buddy, and he's going to team with him for a while, basically against you, Avalanche, and the Butcher. First match, 125-95 Clash of the Champions, number 30, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada, Caesar's Palace. You and Butcher lose to Hogan and Randy. But is that the process here? Like, he's going to bring him in. They're going to tease that he's a heel at Starrcade, but he turns on you guys, and he's a babyface with Hogan. Hogan wanted to kind of reform the Mega Powers.
Yeah, and also the guys he was working with were his friends: Brutus, Avalanche,
You.
Ming. But he had worked with them up in WWE, so he felt comfortable with them. He was the one that actually maybe the booker, him and Eric. So, yeah, and then getting Randy in there. And, Hogan knew that he needed help to draw because he knew that Vince was going to notch it up a ratch. And at that time, too, he had just come off of, I've mentioned this before, Thunder in Paradise, right? He wasn't as big as he was at one time, and he needed something to deflect from him. And this is how important Randy was. When I worked for a year, the day Hogan came in, it came in my mind I had to turn him heel, right?
Yep.
Maybe not the first day, but in 6 months I saw it. Who did he drop the leg on to turn heel?
The Macho Man, Randy Savage.
It could have been it could have been anybody else, but he knew that was going to get the biggest pop.
Interesting. I agree with him. I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. At first, when Savage is there, his big feud was against the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and they had the feud with Angelo Poffo involved. But really, and Miss Elizabeth too, who turns heel and joins Flair against Savage. But really, that was a major feud for Savage for basically a year. I mean, until the NWO kind of arrives. Like that's the big feud for Savage. And Meltzer has reported. I mean, a lot of people have reported. If you pay attention to the numbers, they were, because Hogan too, obviously involved. But like WCW, as soon as you get Hogan, obviously you're going to get eyeballs, but like you get Nitro, you start slowly, you start gaining audience, you start taking away from WWF, you know what I mean? You start building your audience. Savage and Flair were doing really well on the house shows and TV ratings wise. So it's like that feud kind of not sparked obviously the NWO, but it kind of helped them in the meantime before the NWO.
John, do you know that we beat them the first
Yeah, first
Monday
week.
night?
Yep.
And we beat them the first match.
Yep.
That's when I was paying attention, a little attention to the sheets, and that's when Lager was at his zenith in Japan, and I put him with Brian Pillman.
Yes.
I mean, we were off and running. I mean, we didn't continue it, but I remember Paul Heyman saying when he heard we were going to run against him, he said, not only will Vince beat them, they won't be in business in 6 weeks. So,
Wow.
yeah, I remember that at a press conference. Probably the only time Paul made a mistake. But Randy, and we getting back to about Randy throwing the ball, right?
Yep.
His father may still have the Guinness Book of World Records for most sit-ups. Are you aware of that?
Yes, that's right. I did hear he's like a calisthenics nut or whatever. Yeah, he was doing all the 10,000 sit-ups in the Guinness Book of World Record.
Yeah. Do you know how many he did in an hour? Was it 10,000?
I think it was 10,000 an hour, something like that. Yeah, it was some insane number. Yep.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. But if you look at Savage's run, of course, you and him are about, I'd say, 8 to 10 matches together. Any of them stick out as far as wrestling him and working with him? Obviously, a lot of it's tag matches, 6-man tags, different thing like that. The infamous Doomsday Cage, World War III. So you guys are in Texas Tornado matches, lumberjack strap matches. Anything stick out with you and Macho Man?
Yeah. I was in Chicago and Randy was billed from Chicago at different times. He was from Chicago, you know that, right? His father was a school teacher, in the Chicago area. Are you aware of that?
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, his father was a school teacher. That's why I was saying they were smart guys. And his father, obviously, was obsessive compulsive, do that many sit ups. And Randy and I were on the semifinal, and I don't know who Hogan was wrestling. Probably Flair. Because Flair was big in Chicago, big everywhere, but big in Chicago. So I said, Randy, you're going to use the elbow? Because that elbow was snug.
Yep.
And when he gave it to you, I wanted to get up, half. I didn't want to be my head on the mat, on my chest. I wanted to be able to go back with it. He said, yeah. I said, okay. 2 minutes later, he said, I'm going to have you kick out of the elbow. And I'm going to go to slam you. It's small package me. And you're going to beat me. I said, no, Randy, I'm not going to beat you. You are the star. Let's do the right thing. He said, no. He said, you're going to beat me. And we did it. And I didn't think he was going to have me kick out. In fact, if I moved at all, it was just my leg kicking. He rolled over. And he said, small package. And I small packaged him.
Wow.
So I got back to the dressing room and I went over and I said, Randy, I appreciate what you did, but that wasn't the right thing for you. He said, you've done a lot of right things for me. He said, it was time to pay you back.
Wow. What a
And I
nice
thought,
guy. Damn.
yeah. And I thought, wow. And then we became friends. There was a time in Florida where we were in uh, Disney, and that's only 60 miles from Tampa. So I used to go over Tampa quite a bit after we get through early in the early evening, 5 o'clock, 4:30. I would go over, and this is when Randy wasn't working. He was training for that Spider-Man movie. So he said, "Meet me on the causeway. We'll go for a workout and then go for sushi." So I pull over the causeway and I see a guy with a black cap on backwards. It was, those black caps the guys used to wear in the 90s. You know which one I'm talking about? The leather ones.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And his back was to me, and his had a black T-shirt on. And I didn't think it was Randy. It was so huge.
Yeah, he got ripped.
I said, and big. He probably put on 40 pounds. I said, "Randy?" He said, "Yeah." So, Randy, I used to be able to really train legs. I was really good at legs. Uh, I would do high reps with squats. And like I'd start with 2 1/4 and do 100, 315, 75. So Randy, as competitive he was, jumped in with it and he was doing it with me. We go out to dinner. I go to pick up the bill. He said it's been paid already. He treated me incredibly well. Not many people went to his place. He took me to his place. Uh, he had a friend there, and they made me a dinner. And he had a beautiful place right on the beach. And Randy really treated me wonderfully. We got along wonderfully. But people could get into Randy's head. And they would play on his head. And I saw him turn on a few people because I had a conversation with him one time. He was handling a friend of his in a completely different light. And I said, "Randy, is something go wrong with you two?" And he said, "Yeah, he's been talking about me behind my back." Well, some of the guys from New York would stir him, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And they did it for a nasty rib.
Hmm.
And as paranoid as Randy was, it didn't take much to stir it. And I wish, in some respects, that Randy was, most of those guys had their own dressing room. Randy always had guys in his room. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have the door shut and you had a knock on it. His door was always open for guys. He was very, very, he wanted to be one of the guys. He never forgot where he came from. Yet, those guys, out of viciousness or being just malicious to pop themselves to get him paranoid, you didn't need to do much. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was not conducive for Randy. I almost wish that his brother had been on the road with him. Maybe, if you weren't going to use him, he could have been on the road with Randy because he was a calming influence to Randy.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yep.
And years later,
And years later, as far as on the road with Macho and Lanny.
yeah, I think, oh, so years later, Randy got into a argument with one of the couple of the guys. And he came to me and said, "Hey, nobody's going to watch my back. Will you watch my back?" I said, "Yeah, I'll watch your back. I'll make sure nobody jumps in." He said, "I don't want to fight the guy, but he's been saying some shit about Randy." And I thought that was admirable that he's sticking up for his brother.
Yep.
And nothing ever happened. I got to take the trash out. So nothing ever happened, but it showed you that if Lanny had been on the road, I think it would have been a very good thing for Randy.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I agree. So as far as
Yeah,
Randy, WCW, his run there, obviously he would feud with DDP, a part of the NWO. He joined the NWO. They'd have an awesome feud of the year 1997. He'd then go on and feud more with Hulk Hogan, of course. He'd go on and feud with Sting for a little bit. He'd join the NWO Wolfpack. He then kind of did a little bit of a pimp gimmick with the beautiful, gorgeous George and Medusa and Miss Mona, aka Miss Nitro, aka Miss WCW. So he had quite a good run in WCW for sure. But how would you encapsulate the run? Were you happy with the run? It's a two-time world champion. What do you think of his run in WCW overall?
I thought it was great, but I even think it could have been bigger. I had seen Randy in my head being, when Randy went to them, it kind of tipped the scales. You got Hogan, you got Nash, you got Six Pack, you got Hall. Couldn't Randy have been like a bounty hunter where each side could have vied for his him as a hired gun or
Yes.
stayed with WCW? I think there might have been underlying circumstances in a little bit of a checkmate, or at least in check. I thought that too. Maybe Randy was influenced by these guys being the cool thing. I think if we made him a bounty hunter, or if he stayed with WCW, his spot would have been better. Do you think I might be right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Could have been. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Because people love to hear Randy rap and talk. He was stuck in a position where there was 5 or 6 guys around him all the time. I thought the spotlight should have been on Randy much more than it was. And as time goes by, I'm glad we're doing this episode with Randy. As time goes by, people forget how great Randy was. And Randy had to overcome a lot of obstacles, so I can understand why he was paranoid. So I think if we had kept him, the spotlight on him by himself, it would have been better for Randy and better for the company.
To me, if you're going to put together the perfect wrestler, meaning the guy that could talk, he could wrestle, he has a good look, he has charisma, he has that like quality that you're like, holy shit, that guy, that's Macho Man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a star. Like I'm going to put him on Slim Jim. I'm going to put him on commercials. Like, he could be the perfect wrestler to me because I know Hogan is great and he's got all the charisma in the world, but just throw in the fact that Savage was a better worker, better wrestler in the ring. Savage is the most perfect wrestler. Him and Flair, to me, are the two probably most perfect guys.
And let's not forget, as great as Ricky Steamboat was,
Never a heel.
Bobby,
Never a heel.
never heel, but as great as he was, his great matches were with guys that were very, very talented, Flair and Randy. I don't they say that that match was the best match ever in WrestleMania?
Yes. Oh, yes. Big time.
So people forget about that. He was a giving guy too. Like I told you what he did for me. There'd been no Diamond Dallas Page if there was no Randy Savage.
Yep.
He made Page. And he did that very unselfishly. He could have balked and he might not have said, okay, I'm going to put him over, but we'll do a DQ or I'll get counted out or a double count out. He got Page up and running. I didn't see anybody else really step up to the plate till later on after Randy had done his. I may be talking out of school here. I know that Nash and Hall helped Page quite a bit.
Yeah, but DDP says Macho Man above all.
So so there it is. Macho Man was the guy that stepped forward and said, "I'll take the first bullet."
He's the man. He was the
yeah,
man. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
And to have like a guy of that prestige, you know, putting you over immediately, even as a fan, I remember back then, as soon as he pinned him at Spring Stampede, I'm like, well, this guy's a main eventer now. You know, because you lose, I mean, you beat Macho Man, you're a main eventer.
Right, right.
Just to me, amazing wrestler, amazing legacy. Obviously, he passed away this month as well, all the way back about 12 years ago. So,
It's been that long. Wow.
yeah, yep. R.I.P. Macho Man about 12 years ago now, which is nuts. But yeah, what a obviously died way too soon. What a tragic end, sad end. But man, what a freaking career. To me, behind Hogan, you got to think of him as one of the goats. To me, anyway. I know it's people say Steve Austin and Flair, but Savage has got to be in that list too.
Yeah, and it had to be the best 1-2 punch ever, right?
Yep. I put them one and then Rock Austin two. Yep.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm not going to put Randy and Hogan above Rock and Austin because they brought that back, that company. But a lot of people forget how intricate Randy was to that company. I mean, I never, let me ask you this. Did you ever understand the reason why they took him off and made him a commentator?
No. Nope. They was trying to go for a youth movement, but the guy wrestled for 7 more years after that at a main event level. So, and obviously Vince made a mistake with him and Hogan. I mean, that was apparent. Like, come on, they had so much more left in the tank, and you basically created a monster in WCW by letting Hogan and Savage go there. You almost bankrupted yourself by letting them do that. Crazy, huge mistake.
Yeah, But and I got to give Rock and Austin a lot of credit because they brought that back.
Yes.
You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
And but it saddens me that people forget Randy how important he was. And the other one that you said about Randy passing away early, Lanny was the one that really got me. I don't think Lanny rather had many vices. I don't think he did.
No, he was all healthy, healthy, healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think he drank much except when he moved to Panama and was drinking a little wine, but, you know, it wasn't that he was guzzling it. Uh, he was a health nut, always in slim shape, in the days of guys roided up, he wasn't roided up, except for I heard a interview that he did at one time when they thought he was gonna work with Hogan. He worked with Hogan once, I guess.
Yeah. Great match. Yep.
Yeah, and boy, that just floored me when he passed away. Did he pass away in New Jersey, John?
New York. New York. Yeah. He was somewhere between New York and New Jersey. Yeah.
And what happened? Do you know?
No, they said it was congestive heart failure, but I'm not sure. Outside of that, I'm not sure what happened because the night before he was at a Broadway show in New York City, smiling with a lady friend or whoever that were for a friend, whatever. But
Yeah.
they're hanging out and they were smiling, laughing. They went out to eat and everything. And the next morning, had passed away.
And Randy had heart failure too, right?
Yeah, he had the heart attack and then the car accident. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they obviously, and Angelo lived to be very old, and his wife did too, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, the mom had lived past well past Randy. Yeah, and she was something like 90 something. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. None of us are promised tomorrow.
Totally. Yeah, totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
And that's a good stopping point for this week. Love the Macho Man, but let's hit the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check the website tmptempire.com. Kevin, what do you got?
Next weekend, I'm going to be in Rheingold, Georgia for Paul Lee. I got a seminar, and I'm also managing Andrew Anderson on that show. And then the following week, I'm down in Pompano Beach for the tapings of the revival of Championship Wrestling from Florida.
Awesome. Awesome
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you to Kevin, and thank you everybody out there for listening. See you right back here next week for a little Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. We'll see you next week, folks.